still in a construction phase, and we are asking for assistance.
But I think it's important to build on what Aggie said, that we use local labor when we do these construction projects, and I think it's more important that we use apprenticeship language tied into these projects, similar to what we've done with the Syracuse City School District projects. But I would support it if that was added into it. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Tom Irizzo. I'm also a council rep for the Carpenters Union. Just going to piggyback on what Jim said. With the Syracuse School District project, we're currently working with SUNY EOC. We've put 14 people to work on various projects through the language that the school district put in, that to start an apprenticeship, hire local labor. It really helps, and she knows, we get out with the community and we put local people to work and give them a fair wage. So if you could consider that, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Rich Pachalski, Syracuse United Neighbors, Executive Director. Excuse my facial outlook. I got Bell's palsy, but I'm going to spit it out. I've been here before. Sun has been around for 40 years, active on the near west side, Skunk City, southwest, and south side neighborhoods. According to the city's Director of Code Enforcement, we got about 1,700 vacant houses. most of these vacant houses are on the southwest sides. The land bank has about 800 vacant houses, and 70% of those vacant houses are in our target neighborhood. We rarely see any effort to renovate vacant houses. And that's what our position is. SIDA receives benefits from these developers that come in our neighborhoods or come in our city in this case, and we see no benefits in terms of renovating vacant houses. It just came from a land bank meeting, and they're talking about maybe up to $1 million coming down the pike for demolitions. Is that what you guys want to do, destroy our neighborhoods? You know, we got beautiful houses, and efforts need to be done in terms of getting money to fix up these vacant houses. And if the developers get benefits like this case, we ought to see some of those benefits in terms of fixing up our vacant houses. City got a couple months ago AHC contract for $400,000 for about 10 to 12 houses, you know, but that money is not enough to fix up those 10 to 12 because $40,000 ain't going to do pot in terms of fixing up a vacant house. We want to see some money come from SIDA in terms of fixing up these vacant houses. And that's our opposition today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diana Green. I'm not opposed to development. I just have this basic question, and I agree with all the other speakers before on their concerns, especially about jobs and housing. We know that Syracuse doesn't have a whole lot of money to do a lot of things, and so I guess every time a developer comes up here for a major project, it's the question in my mind is, does anybody pay taxes anymore? So that's just my question.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. With this, we can close it. Yep. So at this time, we will then now close the public hearing, and we will call the SIDA meeting to order. First order of business is roll call. Mike Frame, Chair.
Ricky Brown.
Kathy Murphy.
Steve Thompson.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to proof of notice. And I so note that the meeting has been timely posted and properly provided. With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. We'll start with the April 20th Board of Directors meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Now moving on to the May 15 board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Now we'll move on to new business. And the first order of business will be rapid response monitoring. Sue?
Good morning, everyone. The first item in your agenda with respect to this project for which we just held the public hearing is an inducement resolution. And as you see in the resolution, this project was originally undertaken by the board, and they constructed an addition to their existing facility. After they started construction, they realized that they need to increase the scope of the expansion. They came back to the board and they got that approved. But as a result of that, what had been awarded to them in sales and use tax went all to the new addition to the facility as it was expanded. They now are looking to renovate the existing portion of the building that had not previously been undertaken. The original project and the expansion resulted in approximately 400 new positions being created in the city. With this renovation, they are anticipating, I believe, over the course of the next 5 years, approximately 100 new jobs at the facility. They are looking for approval of sales and use tax exemption in an amount not to exceed $400,000. There are no other benefits being sought at this time. The benefit will be used to renovate the existing facility. And so I would note for the record that the project, as originally adopted, does have a pilot that goes along with it. We have consulted with the assessor. The proposed changes and renovations to the existing facility will not significantly impact the assessment of the facility, and therefore there will be no change in the pilot as originally approved and as currently in place.
So did they say again when they expect 100 new jobs, but by when?
In the course of the next 5 years.
Over the course of the next 5 years.
Also, Sue, just in terms of reporting, how are we going to review and accept that data? How is that data being reported?
I really should defer to Nora and Judy, but annually they are obligated under their existing leases, and they would continue to have that obligation with respect to the new facility to report, as does every project that SIDA has. And at the end of the year, they get a questionnaire that is somewhat lengthy. It asks about job creation. It asks about benefits received and utilized. You get a 340, which is what gets filed with the state to identify how much sales and use tax has been utilized during the reporting period. You get information about job creation. You get information about the use of local labor, because you do have a local labor policy. Judy is the one who is in charge of getting the information and collecting it, so she may be in a better position to add anything I've missed.
And then we report to the state on our annual report each year. And additionally, as far as construction goes, any contractors, they need to report to us. We file a form. It's referred to as an ST60. They need to report to us who they are using for contractors, subcontractors. They need to be in the 5-county area. If they're not, we request a waiver. They have to prove to us that they weren't able to find somebody in this area to use. And in the case of rapid response, it hasn't come up. They've always used local.
Does that answer your question, Ricky?
Any other questions? So do we need to just vote on the final resolution or on the inducement resolution?
We need to do both. So
Okay.
the inducement is actually undertaking the project and authorizing the $400,000 in sales and use tax exemption.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Now, next will be the final resolution.
Yes, the final resolution in your agenda merely allows and authorizes the board to enter into and execute any documents necessary to effectuate the conference of the financial assistance that was approved. In this case, I'll go back and look at the file, but my guess is it will just be an amendment to the existing documents since they're already in place and cover the entire facility. And it authorizes the chairman, the vice chairman, and the executive director to execute any necessary documents.
Can I have a motion to approve the final resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution carries. Great.
Thank you.
Sue, now on to Seaman Development.
Yes. So the next item in your agenda is a request by Seaman Development Company, LLC. This is a project that closed in 2015, located at 410 to 414 South Clinton Street. It was the renovation of an existing 4-story building into mixed use. So it was commercial on the bottom floor and market rate apartments on the upper floors. The original appointment for purposes of sales and use tax exemption expired in February of 2016. In August of 2017, the company came back and said there was some additional renovations that they had not yet gotten to, and they asked to be reappointed. At no time did they ask for an increase in their financial assistance. They had not utilized all that had been approved. They just didn't get it all done in the appropriate time. The board did approve a reappointment of them as their agent so that they could utilize that benefit. That appointment expires at the end of June of 2018. The company just came back and advised the board that they are almost entirely done with the project. There were some delays beyond their control with respect to zoning and some weather issues that they encountered. And really, they're at a point where they have open invoices that need to be paid, and they have a few last-minute items that need to be addressed, but other than that, the project is done, and they're simply asking for an extension of their appointment so that they can utilize the assistance that was already provided. They are not now asking for any additional financial assistance, nor have they ever, really. It's just been a timing issue for them.
So a motion to approve the extension of the sales tax appointment? Until
Yes,
the
and
project-
I apologize, I didn't note for the board, the extension would be through November.
Through
And that
November
would-
1st?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
allow them the time to finalize
18.
payment of, yeah.
18.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now, the National Development Council.
Yes. So before you is an annual contract that SIDA engages in with the National Development Council for consulting services. NDC is a, well, I'll let our guest speak, but this is a longstanding contract SIDA has undertaken for consulting services for both SIDA, but also the city as a whole for activities in the city. Bud Sweet here is our regional rep and could speak a little bit more about NDC if the board has questions. I know this is a new contract for you, but about what NDC does and how we work with them.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bud.
I have information packets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We love information packets.
National Development Council has been around for half a century. We were founded in New York originally, and the whole purpose of NDC was to attract private capital to areas that historically have been underinvested in or not invested in at all. So if you look at NDC's footprint, which is now national, I'm part of the East team. Most of my work's in the Northeast. We work exclusively, or nearly exclusively, in urban cores in rural areas. These are the areas that have traditionally been hard-pressed to attract capital for economic development, community development, and housing. So through a combination of technical assistance, advising cities and communities in their creations, IDAs, local development corporations, urban renewal agencies, we help them attract that private sector capital. We don't work in the exurbs, we don't work in the suburbs. The market pretty much takes care of those areas. But besides technical assistance, we also have product. And if you go through our brochures, you'll see that we have a panoply of products that we've developed over the years. We're an SBA 7A lender. So we do SBA 7A lending in the city of Syracuse, again, focusing on the poor census tracts. We've been recipient of over $700 million in new market tax credits since the inception of the program. We've probably done more new market tax credit projects in upstate New York than any CDE. In fact, we've done one in Syracuse, so looking at another one. We also do over $700 million in low-income housing tax credit projects. Right? And then on the community development side, which includes building city halls, parking facilities, college dorms, wet labs, you name it, we use bonding authority. We've probably done about $2.5 billion of real estate through that program. So Syracuse, through its IDA, can avail themselves of not only the technical assistance, but the products that we provide.
The one other item that is new this year is a contract with NDC to do an evaluation through a vendor that they use to evaluate the city's parking system. So garages, street parking, lots. Parking touches a lot of different departments, so they will be assisting us with a whole-scale evaluation of the system, improvements, structures. You have the scope in there. so that, as the city looks for revenue and or cost savings opportunities, we're working with some solid information to make those decisions. So we anticipate that scope starting in July, running through the end of the year, and being in a position for the next budget year to work with the city to make some recommendations. Parking's a big part of economic development, so it's a really important, and we're lucky to have the expertise of both BUD and ABM as the vendor. Any questions for me or BUD, or really anybody?
So are they gonna do all 4 of these projects? I mean, look into them and evaluate them and have a report?
Which 4?
The ones that are in Scope A and
Well,
Exhibit A.
Scope A is under NDC's purview. Scope B, Exhibit B is the ABM services.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the reason we brought ABM in is they're national company, actually. They have some international operations. Very deep, very broad, and we working with them in Scranton. A couple of years ago, we took over all the parking in Scranton through our P3. We entered into a lease agreement with the city and their parking authority to regularize their system. We brought in ABM because they have the breadth and depth to take on such a comprehensive overhaul. So we felt that given the comprehensive nature of what Nora has requested, they would be the best suited for.
Specific on that.
Correct.
Okay.
The other 3, Steve, are possibilities. We did talk with the Director of Operations, Corey Driscoll Dunham, about other opportunities where NDC may be helpful. So this is just an example of those, but NDC, I will say to their credit, has been extremely flexible over the past few years with our technical assistance requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So looking for a motion to approve the contract? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Next, Nora, we'll move on to Syracuse Economic Development Corporation, or SIDCO.
Yes, so you'll remember a couple of months ago, an MOU was brought to this board to formalize what had been a verbal standing practice agreement between SIDCO and SIDA for repayment on the HUD 108 bonds. You have a lot of information in your materials, but ultimately SIDCO was repaying SIDA for those HUD 108 bonds from the proceeds of a project that SIDCO holds a mortgage on. SIDA was then in turn using that revenue in part to pay off the HUD 108 bonds. SIDA has over the past few years paid off those HUD 108 bonds to the point where there is no longer a threat towards the city CDBG allocation. So we are now in the last few years of those payoffs and thought that it would be a good time to sort of memorialize as we go forward the relationship between SIDCO and SIDA relative to that payment structure. While staff was reviewing that, it came to light that it might be in the best interest of the city's economic development efforts for SIDCO to retain payments from the mortgages rather than pass through to SIDA. SIDCO is our revolving loan fund from the city, lends to those projects in the city that may not be able to get funding sources elsewhere. Recapitalizing SIDCO would be, without many legs and strings and conditions, wouldn't be as easy as potentially any other avenue. So we are recommending, and this MOU reflects both the history of this agreement and also a path forward. Thank you, Sue. Towards resolving the SIDCO-SIDA agreement, but then also allowing SIDCO to continue lending with the proceeds from that mortgage. So SIDCO, as is stated here, will pay a one-time payment in consideration of forgiveness of the receivable that's on SIDA's books for that those HUD 108 payments. Now, it's worth noting that those HUD 108 payments have gone a long way. They've done a lot of good, but we are now near the end of them. What I want to make sure is clear is that the obligation between SIDCO and the mortgagor is still in full force. So SIDCO will receive those payments and be able to turn around and re-lend them in the city of Syracuse. So that's it in summary. If there are any questions, please let me know.
So, and this MOU specifically, we have the red line copy here, specifically says that the money retained by SEDCO will be used solely to recapitalize SEDCO's revolving loan fund program to businesses within the city of Syracuse. So
Yes.
that is not going outside of the city of Syracuse. And as you said before, just so we're all clear, this doesn't change the relationship between the mortgage holder.
Yep, that is exactly
SEDCO.
right.
So they're not, okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yes. Question and comment. Just in regard to the history of this project, I have to state that I'm strongly in opposition to this agreement. Given the debt that will be forgiven in lieu of payment, and what is the exact amount of that debt from the developer?
There is no payment from the developer due to SIDA right now. The mortgagor is solely obligated to SEDCO. SEDCO and SIDA have a separate agreement that is the same amount, but is not. There is no correlation or relationship between the mortgagor of the building and SIDA.
There is a debt outstanding that exceeds 300 and some odd thousand, correct?
There is a principal of the mortgage between the mortgagor and SEDCO of 4.7 plus interest, and the outstanding balance of the 108s, which SEDCO has in principle agreed to pay, is $351,000 plus interest over the next 3 years.
And so I guess my line of questioning directly is we're tasked with taking the $351,000 or whatever the odd amount is agreement in lieu of that $4.7 million, correct?
SIDA would not be receiving the full payment on the receivable. SEDCO would still be due the full payment on its receivable from the mortgagor.
4.7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just for historical purposes, wasn't there a previous conversation agreement regarding the SEDCO-SIDA relationship and HUD 108 payments?
Yes, so
last year or the year before, as I recall.
Go ahead. At the end of last year, the SIDA board did review this and opted to take no action, given that the change in administration may have changed the makeup of the SIDA board. I don't know if Steve or Ken, if you want to add anything, since you were carryovers.
Correct.
Okay.
I think that the genesis of this MOU was a recognition by both boards, by the board of SIDA, the prior board of SIDA, the prior administration, the board of SEDCO, that there was a lack of information. There was a lack of formality to the agreements as they existed between the two boards. And Ricky, while I understand your questions, the only relationship this board has is a direct relationship with SEDCO. There is no relationship between SIDA and the developer. That's just the way the deal is. And so while I recognize that there was this commonality about what the HUD 108 loan payments were supposed to fund, the only entity SIDA has a contractual, and I'm going to use the word contractual loosely, contractual relationship with is SEDCO. The issue that we face is there's a lack of documentation. It predates everyone sitting at this table. And so the best we can do is review the information we have, which was minutes from both board meetings. Judy was here. The recollection of Judy, the recollection of some other, I think there were a couple of SEDCO board members who were on the board at the time that the arrangements happened, and try to piece together what the agreements were. And in doing that, and in working with both Nora and the executive director of SEDCO, we came up with a construct that we think memorializes what the agreements were. And so here we are. And so where we are is that we have a situation where SIDA owes approximately $351,000 as the balance on the HUD 108 loans. They cannot be prepaid. That is the rules of HUD. So over the course of the next couple of years, those payments will become due. SEDCO has agreed to make a lump sum payment plus interest to this board to cover those future payments. In exchange for that, SEDCO is agreeing that any payments they receive on their obligation due from the developer will be used solely to recapitalize their revolving loan program, which I cannot speak for this board, but my understanding from the SEDCO board in the meetings I've had with those individuals and in speaking with Nora, that they can use those funds to benefit economic development in the city in a way that this board just simply cannot.
So, but my question would be, what are the remaining obligations to that developer? And again, alluding back, and I'm able to separate again the contractual obligations of SEDCO and so on from the actual developer. But in addressing Aggie Lane's point, and again, I've spoken with a number of community leaders about the history of this project. There was a large amount of debt that was conceded when this project was taken on. I would be very hesitant to go forth again in consideration of the history of that project and taking again into account Aggie's point about foregoing the type of revenue that I know that this city potentially needs, right?
But we're not foregoing it. What we're saying is SEDCO, it is still owed to SEDCO, and it always was.
So what is the number? And I guess that's my clarity, is what is that obligation on the developer? Is it still?
It's 4.7 in principle.
And that, I guess the confusion for me was whether or not that developer did not have to pay that debt.
He still is obligated to pay that. That relationship has not changed. That, if you think of it as a line between a pyramid, the relationship to pay the 4.7 goes from the developer to SEDCO, and then it stops. We're not changing that. All we're saying is SEDCO, when you get those monies, you have to use them to put in your revolving loan fund.
Understood. Thank you for that clarity.
And as I recall from now that you've broken it all down, that, Ricky, exactly your questions were what happened at the end of the year last year was, are we forgiving $4.7 million on this, and they didn't have the documentation, and that was one of the major questions, and so it said, well, let's put a hold on this, go down, do an investigation, break it all down, and then come back to the new board.
Yeah, we've done some pretty great
exactly
forensic accounting over the past few months. It's also worth noting.
SEDCO owned the building.
Yep, Jude.
Yeah, and that's why the developer is obligated to SEDCO.
And it's just one other point of fact. The HUD 108s are not solely on that building. They were for a number of different projects.
Other projects.
So,
understood.
just worth noting. Okay, so any other questions on this MOU and the obligations therein?
Can I entertain a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Finally, the agency council.
Sue was gonna.
I'm going to recuse myself and actually go back to the office to work on the JSCB closing, unless anyone has any questions about the what else happened on this agenda.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. I hope everybody has a good day.
As well. Take care, Sue.
Thank you. I'll send you an email once we close tomorrow morning.
Go ahead. Times. Cool. Okay. Okay.
So, Nora, one of the things when Sue left her previous employer, I had a conversation with Nora in order to say it might be time for us to at least explore the opportunity to hire new counsel for SIDA. At that time, we solicited, we put out an RFP and solicited solicited proposals, and we received 2 complete proposals for SIDA's legal counsel work.
Yes.
And there's some copies here if you'd like to review
and you were also provided the electronic versions. Excuse me. In reviewing the proposals, we have 2 recommendations for the board. Based upon the scoring matrix The proposal from Bousquet-Holstein did score the highest of the two proposals for full transactional work. So it is our recommendation for SIDA's general counsel and bond counsel activities going forward that we do hire Bousquet-Holstein. The third proposal was from Barclay Damon, but was solely confined to ongoing eminent domain actions that SIDA has, both with the Hotel Syracuse and also with Destiny. So there are, hang on, I had it right here, now it's gone. 6 ongoing matters that our recommendation, Mike and I, when we met on Friday, would be to retain Barclay Damon as counsel in those matters specific to the eminent domain actions, and they would continue to work closely with our general counsel as those progress.
So I think first maybe for the Barclay Damon, I think obviously since we're in the midst of some of these issues, to switch horses midstream wouldn't really make as much sense, I think, for trying to upload to it. So are we looking first for a motion to approve moving forward still on these eminent domain proceedings with Barclay Damon?
Okay, so Mike, what you're saying, you're going to keep Barclay Damon for the existing stuff that you have?
Correct, just for the specifically for the eminent domain.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Oh, Ricky, sorry.
The second is the for our overall general counsel or outside counsel for SIDA. You'll see we have put together a fairly robust matrix. Obviously, both firms that submitted applications are very well known in the Syracuse area, both located in the city of Syracuse. We're very familiar with them, but it ended up being that from the work that Nora and I did that Bousquet-Holstein ended up being the highest scoring firm. So are there any sort of questions in terms of the matrix or what we put together? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Bousquet-Holstein.
Bousquet-Holstein is our legal counsel.
And those are the fees at the bottom?
Correct.
It's worth noting on projects that the fees are paid by the project sponsor, so we do not incur fees as part of the project. So the any work that they do in general counsel capacity would be at that hourly rate, and which is comparable between both firms.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Great. Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Any other additional new business?
But don't move because we have SLDC.
Okay. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the SIDA board meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Meeting is adjourned. Now we're doing Local Development Corporation board meeting. First thing I'd like to do is call the meeting to order. Roll call. Mike Frame, Chair.
Ricky Brown?
Kathy Murphy.
Steve Thompson.
Ken Kinsey.
Great. Next, proof of notice. Notice of the meeting has been timely and properly provided. Next, we'll move on to minutes. Approval of the minutes from the April 27th board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Moving on to new business, SLDC Council.
Yeah, funnily enough, SLDC Council was also part of the RFP. We did it in one RFP. Again, our analysis remains the same. The eminent domain matters obviously don't affect SLDC, but in terms of general counsel and bond counsel, the recommendation Mike and I have is to retain Bousquet-Holstein.
Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the selection of Bousquet-Holstein as to provide legal services to SLDC.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Great.
Making a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There you go.
Second.
Second. There you go.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
I got that one. That was with